Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Wednesday, June 9th, 2021. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the link in the upper left-hand corner that says Start Here, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. The book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of that book provides a narrative description of the primary tool in this body of work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. It's a tool I've been using to great advantage in my life for over 17 years to improve the quality of my life and relationships and help me turn any emotional state into part of the infallible guidance system that each of us have been given. You can also click on a link and download the PDF file of that tool itself, completely free. Print it off and use it as often as you'd like. You can also go to your app store and type in the 3 words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And by the time you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you click on that, it'll let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet, an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. Also on that page is a link that will let you download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one where people have been stepped through that worksheet process. They can serve as a tutorial for you. And with, your own practice and repeated listenings, that's all you need to become a master of the application of this tool in your life. And if you're like most people, if you do that, you will see profoundly positive benefits. You can also give us a call or send us an email if you have a comment or a question. If you're listening through the archives, you can email Jeanie at jeanie@whyagain.org, and you can email me at tjh@mindshiftersacademy.org. And we hope you do that because it raises questions. And if you have a question for us and you're listening live, our call-in number is 563-999-3581. And if you call that number and press 1, it'll put a little question mark by your phone number, and I'll announce you by your area code, and we can have a conversation. This year we're doing the Course in Miracles lessons through the workbook. Today is the 160th day of the year, so lesson 160 in the workbook reads, I am at home. Fear is the stranger here. The commentary reads, fear is a stranger to the ways of love. Identify with fear, and you will be a stranger to yourself. And thus you are unknown to you. What is your true self remains an alien to the part of you which thinks that it is real but different from yourself. Who could be sane in such a circumstance? Who but a madman could believe that he is what he is not and judge against himself? There is a stranger in our midst who comes from an idea so foreign to the truth, he speaks a different language, looks upon the world truth does not know, and understands what truth regards as senseless. Stranger, yet he does not recognize to whom he comes, and yet maintains his home belongs to him while he is alien now who is at home. And yet how easy it would be to say, this is my home. Here I belong, and I will not leave because a madman says I must. What reason is there for not saying this? What could the reason be except that you had asked this stranger to take your place and let you be a stranger to yourself? No one would let himself be dispossessed so needlessly unless he thought there were another home more suited to his tastes. Who is the stranger? Is it fear or you who are unsuited to be home, to be the home which God provided to his Son? Is his fear his own, created in his likeness? Is it fear that love completes and is completed by? There is no home that can shelter love and fear. They cannot coexist. If you are real, then fear must be illusion. And if fear is real, then you do not exist at all. How simply then the question is resolved. Who fears has but denied himself and said, I am the stranger here. And so I leave my home to one more like me than myself and give him all I thought belonged to me. Now is that person exiled out of necessity, not knowing who he is, uncertain of all things but this, certain that he is not himself and that his home has been denied to him. What does he search for now? What could he possibly find? A stranger to himself can find no home wherever he may look, for he has made return impossible. His way is lost, except a miracle will search him out and show him that he is no stranger now. The miracle will come, for in his home his true self remains. It asked no stranger in, and it took no alien thought to be itself. And it will call its own back to itself in recognition of what is its own. Who is the stranger? Is he not the one given to you? Judge not the Creator's Son, but follow in the way Creator has established. Christ has dreamed the dream of a forgiven world. It is his gift whereby a sweet transition can be made from death to life, from hopelessness to hope. Let us an instant dream with him. This dream awakens us to truth. His vision gives the means for a return to our unlost and everlasting sanctity in the Creator.
Not blaming myself because it was an automatic response to a situation that would have been unbearable at the time. And I also know for sure that my father was certainly raised in a traumatic environment with, he did not perpetrate the type of abuse on us that I think was perpetrated on him. So he was a traumatized kid, and coming from that place.
Remain forever one, and at home in him, and no stranger to himself. Today we offer thanks to the Christ mind that has come to search for the world, for what belongs to him. His vision sees no strangers. His vision only beholds his own and joyously unites with them. They see him as a stranger, for they do not recognize themselves. Yet as they give him welcome, they remember. And he leads them gently home again where they belong. Not one does the Christ mind forget. Not one he fails to give you to remember, that your home may be complete and perfect as it was established. He has not forgotten you, but you will not remember him until you look on all as he does. The person who denies his brother is denying the Creator, and thus refusing to accept the gift of true sight by which his higher self is clearly recognized, his home remembered, and his salvation come. So that's the lesson for today in the commentary, and our Course in Miracles experiment with Pam Grout. Lesson 160 is titled, What the Bananas? She quotes Florence Scovel Shinn as saying, infinite intelligence is ever ready to carry out man's smallest or greatest demands. Pam writes, I have inadvertently become a PR person for the universe. The perks, as you can imagine, are many, but the best thing about this job is that my, quote, employer, close quotes, if you want to call this universal love energy my boss, my employer doesn't ask that I pimp some useless product or lower my standards or pretend to believe in something I don't see proof of every single day. The universe is not trying to sell anything. All it wants to do is give, and give, and give some more. My job as one of its primary press agents is to let the world know that we are loved unconditionally, always, without exception, no matter what. I'm in charge, if you will, of publicizing the fact that the universe is trying like bloody hell to interact with me and you and everybody else. As lesson 160 that reads, I am at home. Fear is the stranger here. As this tells me, the universe wants nothing more than to bless me, to guide me, to help me create the most exciting version of myself possible. And here's the cool part. Not one thing is required of me for this to happen. I don't have to earn its favor or send in a coupon. I just have to release the reality that I read about in the news. I have to make space in my consciousness for the universe to get in. I just have to quit fighting life and let it be. The old reality is as passé as the bump. It's a dance for those of you who missed the disco days. It's defective, and it's causing us to miss the most freaking amazing things. The old reality is wrong, is a lie, is fake. It's defective. And as I believe it, it makes us miss unfolding in, through, as, and around us. So that's lesson 160 today and the commentary. And we have 45 minutes to talk, to share, to entertain questions or comments. Our call-in number is 563-999-3581. And if you call that number and press 1, we can have a conversation. What is on your mind? How can we support you today? We have one person in the chat room, and we have 6 callers and lots of time to talk. We had our support group last night, and we watched The Wisdom of Trauma, which is a documentary movie focusing on the work of Dr. Gabor Mate, or Mate. I don't know how to pronounce that, but Gabor is his first name, and Mate is his second name. And he is quite the promoter of practical, research-based, humanistic approaches to help people with trauma and addictions. And he has devoted his life to working in some of the most dire circumstances with people that are racked with suffering and using various substances and behaviors to try and numb themselves out from that addiction process, or the pain underlying the addiction, the pain that comes from trauma. So it was a pretty intense hour-and-a-half documentary, and it certainly stirred up a lot of things for a lot of people. And yet it's another good reminder of the same basic model of working with people that Dr. Michael Rice presents here for the Mind Shifters radio audience and in his intensives and support groups. Pretty much exactly the same model as Byron Katie, who recognizes that she only suffers when she believes her negative thoughts. Pretty much the same model as Diederik Wolsak with his Choose Again 6-step forgiveness process. And so many others who have tapped into probably a lot of the same source material to understand that life events happen, and yet those life events happening do not create our experience of those life events. It is our choice of what to focus on and how to interpret it, and what we pour our mind energy into, which creates our experience of life moment to moment. At one point in the movie, he's talking to Tim Ferriss, and he asks Tim to think about something that Tim used to create upset in his life recently. And Tim said, well, I've got one. I went away and I had hired this person to come and do a bunch of, repairs and chores around my house while I was gone. And I came back and none of it was done. And Gabor asked him to think about what he made that mean. I guess he asked him what emotion he felt, and he felt disappointment, and Gabor said, okay, so that's sadness. Disappointment is sadness. And then he asked him what he made it mean. Why, would somebody not do that? Well, they don't respect the person, they don't think they're valuable, they don't think they're worthy. And so then Gabor asked him, okay, so what kind of person gets treated as though they're not valuable and they don't deserve respect and they're not worthy? And Tim Ferriss says, well, somebody who isn't valuable, who isn't worthy. And then Gabor said, now, are there any other possible explanations for why this repair person didn't do the work that you wanted him to do while you were gone? And Tim says, well, it might have been that he got stuck at an airport, or that he was, had some other thing waylay him, and Gabor said, or he's got attention deficit disorder. And they listed several other things that might have been going on in that person's life that have nothing to do with Tim Ferriss. And then Gabor said, now, notice out of all those options we just named, notice the one you chose. And then Gabor said, truly, you didn't choose it. Your mind handed it to you. And it's the worst possible one, and it's all about you. And then you pour your mind energy into that, and you create this belief that this person is disrespecting you, and that this person holds a negative view of you as being not worthy of respect and not a good person and not valuable, etc. That's what we do on a regular basis. We are creating our experience of life. Tim Ferriss didn't create that person not showing up. Tim Ferriss created what he made it mean to him.
That's why. And if I don't
area
know
code
who's
901.
calling me, if I don't know who's texting me,
the hand went up temporarily, so I thought that was somebody that wanted to make a comment. So, our call-in number is 563-999-3581, and we have plenty of time for conversation, or question, or answer. And if you don't know Gabor Mate's work and you want to look into it, he has got all kinds of YouTube videos. He has a book titled something about ghosts. It's going to come to me here in a minute. I'm looking up in my library. It has the In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, Close Encounters with Addiction. It's quite a long book. If you're listening to it on Audible, it's 15 hours worth plus, and it's It's a landmark book in terms of treatment, addictions, and harm reduction, and they talk about a system of dealing with people who struggle with addiction that's focused on harm reduction rather than punishment and criminalization of addictive substances, etc. And it's been part of a movement to revolutionize the way we work either in towns or states or nationally with our government, the way we work with people who are in so much pain that they get involved in an addictive process to numb themselves from the pain. And the pain most often comes from early life trauma. It doesn't have to be early, but most often it's a lot of early life trauma. And so if you want to look into that, he has a number of books. The one that was the core of the documentary that we watched last night with the support group was In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, Close Encounters with Addiction. So, what's on your mind? What would serve you for spending the next 35 minutes? How can we support you in either finding out more about what these tools are that we offer and or how to apply them effectively in your life to improve your life? 563-999-3581. And if you call that number and press 1, we can have a conversation. I was pleased to see that several people that I've been dealing with recently are making lots of headway in terms of understanding that they are the ones creating their emotions. And I had somebody come in last night for a session who was completely convinced just 3 weeks ago that the outside events in his life were causing his upset. And then, of course, what that means is he's a victim and he's helpless. And we were trying to help him understand that while the outside events are there, they're as he describes them, he was feeling some pressure to do something and he wanted to please certain people in his life, and he wanted to avoid judgment from other people in his life. So he made a decision rather with intense emotions and hastily, and soon after he made the decision, he regretted it. And now he's, basically living with a very expensive decision, and he has possession of this house and property, and now he's miserable. And he thinks he's miserable because of the condition of the house or its location or what accoutrements it has or doesn't have. And I kept trying to work with him to understand he's not miserable because of the house or its location or its accoutrements or the screen missing on a window or the holes in other screens or the loose board on a deck. That's not causing his upset. And he was pushing back rather strongly, rather heavily. And I kept asking him, okay, so how do you think about yourself? He said, well, I had a lapse in judgment. I had a serious lapse in judgment. And he had this energy dripping off his words when he said a serious lapse in judgment. And so I asked him, okay, let's use your words and ask you, when in the recent or distant past have you or somebody that had authority over you done what you thought was a serious lapse in judgment that had a powerful impact on you. And he was fighting me tooth and nail. He didn't want to go back and look at anything in the past. He wanted to focus on the details of this house and what it was missing and what was damaged and why it wasn't good and how much he had to pay for it. And I just gently kept pursuing. Okay, but let me just ask you, how are you thinking about yourself relative to having made this decision, which you're now labeling a serious lapse in judgment? And he said, well, I'm just ripping myself apart. And he said it with that venom, that intense emotion in his words. And I said, that's it exactly. The reason you're in the physical pain you're in, the emotional pain you're in, the tearful episodes you're having is because you are viciously beating yourself up in your judgment of yourself for having made this decision, which you're now calling a serious lapse in judgment. And he went on about how could I have done this? And I said, it's very simple, actually. Whenever I load a goal in my mind that doesn't get met, and that goal happens to be connected in my mind to pain or fear or guilt or shame or rage, when those energies get activated in my mind, it literally distorts my vision. It literally changes my perception. And he said, yeah, that's it. I looked at this house. Some part of me refused to see all of these things. And then as soon as we took possession, I went and I started looking around. I saw all these things, and I thought, how could I have not seen this? And I said, it's very simple. Whenever I have an intense negative emotion active in my mind, it distorts my perception. Perception, as we talk about in this work, is a very active process. There's nothing passive about it. I don't just open my eyes and then instantly see whatever is there to be seen. My goals, my wishes, one of the lines in Course in Miracles says, we must come to understand the distorting power of the way we want things to be. So he wanted this to be a great house. He wanted this to be a done deal. He wanted to move out of, literally distort his perception. He literally could not see what was right there to be seen. And as I say that, I'm aware that that's the title of a chapter in a book that you can find on a CIA website. If you search for CIA and perception and creating perception, there's a chapter of a book that's titled, Why Can't We See What Is There to Be Seen? And the answer to it is, if we have strong emotions resonated, they distort the mechanism within us that actually creates perception. And if you want to get more information about that, you can go to YouTube and type in the name Anil Seth, A-N-I-L, Seth, S-E-T-H. And if it doesn't come up right away, type in perception or hallucinating perception. And there's several very direct TED Talks about the science of perception and about how actively we create the pictures our mind shows us. We screen out certain details, we add others, we distort others, and there's no doubt about it. The science is in, it's very hard evidence. So when I want something to be a certain way, my mind will serve up evidence that it is that way. Trick is, it doesn't last. That evidence doesn't hold up to scrutiny after my emotions have diffused and my clarity of perception has been restored. The good news is, if I can let myself see the truth, it becomes empowering. It might be a bit of a wake-up call at first because I might have such a well-practiced pattern of blaming others, and it might feel a little awkward to understand that I'm actually the one creating the very pain that I say I don't want to experience. And yet, if it's true, and I wake up to the realization that it is my process of mind that's actually causing the pain that I don't want to experience, then I've got direct access to what's causing the pain, and I can choose again, as the Course in Miracles asks us to do so often. So, a little crack in the armor when I was working with this person because he heard himself say that he is furious with himself for having made this lapse in judgment. And then he was able to see how the anger he's experiencing, that he says is about his lapse in judgment, is directly related to a lot of this tension and these tears and this overwhelm. And so as we introduce some tools to help him get clear about the pain, fear, or sadness that's most likely underlying that rage, we're giving him the tools to access and dismantle the stuff that he says he doesn't want, despite the fact that unwittingly he was an active participant in creating it. And that's what we offer in these tools. The primary tool is the Reality Management Worksheet, and we encourage people to use it soon and often. The first 3 steps of the worksheet, I simply outline for myself what my conscious logical mind is doing to create the distortion in perception. And I learn to recognize that if I'm in any kind of physical, mental, or emotional pain, it's there not to punish me, it's there to serve me as an alarm system, as a wake-up call, as a call to attention to change the focus of my awareness and to make changes in whatever areas I have access to control. And as I do that, with knowledge of how the system works and how when I pour mind energy and emotional energy into certain thought patterns, that's what creates a strengthening of the resonant energy and the actual physical sensations within me. The energies that we call the physical energies, the neuropeptides, the stress hormones, etc. And if I'm aware that whatever energy, mind energy I pour into certain thought patterns is responsible for that, and my experience of those energies, neuropeptides, stress hormones, tensions, then I can shift the focus of my thoughts or what I'm going to pour my mind energy into. And lo and behold, most everybody who's picked up the tool, the Reality Management Worksheet, and applied it, and done enough of them to get some success, lo and behold, we understand that it's entirely possible to change my emotional state dramatically, even when nothing that my mind was telling me is causing the upset has changed at all. So these tools are liberating, these tools are powerfully effective, these tools are there to help enhance our quality of life, and they're available absolutely free. So, what's your comment? What's your question? What's your answer? What's your soliloquy? We have time. We have 21 or 22 minutes left. 563-999-3581. One of the fascinating things about the documentary last night was that Dr. Mattei was talking about how many physical ailments, our current medical model treats with steroids. And these steroids are essentially stress hormones, distilled, concentrated stress hormones. They do what our stress hormones do. So it's mind-boggling to realize that the vast majority of inflammatory problems, irritable bowel syndrome and asthma and bronchitis and all these different things that they treat with steroids, is they're treating stress response patterns with stress hormones. So rather than looking at the underlying cause of all the stress, they just keep pouring synthetic or knockoff stress hormones into the human energy system to numb it out from the symptoms or effects of creating mental emotional stress over a prolonged period of time. Area code 910, you're in the air.
Hey, Dr. Tim, it's Jill from Wilmington.
Welcome, Jill.
You invited people with soliloquies, so I thought I would call. I have a story, a healing story, and I thought I would share because it does definitely relate to the tools and also this film that you're talking about. I watched it yesterday too. So I'll try to keep it somewhat brief, but my dad has been sick and he's back in the hospital, but I was not supposed to know about this. This is kind of a secret that I accidentally found out. And I called and talked to him on Monday. That was his birthday. And we had the most inauthentic, kind of ridiculous conversation because I know he's in the hospital, but I'm saying, happy birthday, and what are you going to do, and are you having fun? And he's just kind of going along with it. And I was furious rage was kind of building up in me. And so even the next day, I was just angry. And I could feel it crackling in my energy field. And I could also feel, it was, the trauma response where we go up into the fight or flight and then, hopefully resolve it. Well, I could feel myself going up into fight and then cutting off the resolution, reasons why I can't say these words or I shouldn't feel this way. So I knew that I needed some help, and I reached out to some areas, but I started watching this movie, and even before that I was somebody about, what it boils down to is this lack of authenticity, and no wonder I don't trust men, and no wonder, and that lack of trust generalizes to so many people, but then weirdly, I will also trust untrustworthy people. Like I kind of missed the cues that tell me don't trust this person, and I will place my trust into someone who then acts untrustworthy and reinforces my beliefs. So, it's all curious, and it's this tangled up feeling that I had. So I'm watching the movie, and Gabor Mate, he's also child development is one of his specialties. He's got, he's just brilliant. And he says that there are two things that humans need and children and babies need. It's non-negotiable. They need attachment and they need authenticity. And I was blown away by that comment because I'm thinking, this is so silly. What am I, I can't be real. That seems so corny. But when I heard him say that it is a non-negotiable need, it just kind of, it stunned me to think then that I'd never had authenticity with either one of my parents, probably. And what happens is the child who cannot be authentic disassociates from herself. And no wonder I ignored cues from my gut to say this person isn't trustworthy. No wonder I was so furious about not being able to be authentic with my dad and knowing that he was not authentic with me. And it really began to diffuse so much of that rage that was just unmanageable. And I was really I had to be very careful not to lash out at my partner, who is a man. And, because I was in that frame of mind, all men are untrustworthy jerks, to put it mildly. He was an untrustworthy jerk. No, and he's just innocently being who he is, which is not an untrustworthy jerk. But so that rage. He
was showing up that way in your mind.
Exactly. Of course, I saw him that way. I couldn't not see him that way because I was just in that fog of that illusion, which had a foundation, but it was my perception. And that comment from Dr. Mate just blew it all up. But even further, the hospital social worker called me. And so the secret's out because now, I know what's going on with my dad. And it gave me the opportunity to be authentic with him. And I could complete that cycle, which is a miracle. A true healing miracle. And that was all kind of accidental, the way it all happened. But I was so grateful, too, because in my authentic conversation with my dad, I could say, we, your children, love you, and we want you to tell us what's going on so that we can make sure you're safe and comfortable and taken care of. And he could say, I made a mistake, but I did it out of love. And he could be authentic back with me. And that was something I didn't think I'd get. I was in the state of that's it. I'm writing him off. I hate him. I don't want anything to do with this guy anymore. It's all his fault that I have had a miserable life. This is how dramatic it got. Terrible relationships, no trust, blah, 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 all that stuff. And in the space of a few hours, entire energy field shifted from spitting fire and rage to complete acceptance and back to the love that I am, that I was so disconnected from, but then truly connected to.
This is one of the more powerful examples of how the Course in Miracles keeps telling us, and the Way of Mastery tells us, even on the 5th page, we don't experience anything that we don't choose in one way or another. And your choice of perception was leading you to think, that's it. There's absolutely no safety, no possibility for connection. I'm out of here. I'm cutting this guy out of my life forever. When in reality, when in actuality, when you were able to reestablish the authenticity, which is that fundamental need for us, everything about your perception and everything about the potential for your life to turn out differently in the next breath, the next moment, changed dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's the Course in Miracles and the Way of Mastery's lesson telling us we create the world we see. And that's a powerful example you just gave.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that world looks very real. It appears so real. So having practiced this for a long time, I know now that there's something on the other side of it, even though I cannot see it in that moment. But I knew, I had the awareness, when I was so angry, I knew I cannot take it out on my partner or my son. Like, I have to really be careful. And I even said to my son, speaking of being authentic, I told him, I just feel mad at your grandpa right now, and so if I'm a little snappy with you, it's just because it's hard for me to regulate those feelings or something like that. But I wanted him to know that, how could he not pick up on my rageful attitude, because it was there. So anyway, it's the awareness.
That is the most the words are failing me. But what I'm trying to let you understand is, as simple as it might seem to somebody who's watching from the outside or listening to you say that, that is super parenting. That is healthy parenting on steroids. Right? Sometimes people think, to be a good parent, I just have to never be upset. And that's just not true, because if I'm never upset, then I never get an opportunity to teach my children how to handle their upset. And if I never show them that I'm upset, then they think they're the only ones that get upset, and then we can't model for them how to deal with their emotions. So it's not about never getting upset or angry. It's about explaining upsets and anger and fears and sadness, and coaching our children about how to deal with these things, which are part of our life experience and can be extraordinarily beneficial. They can be really good sources of information for us. As I say in the intro these days, that the tools that are provided at whyagain.org allow me to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that we've all been gifted. So that is super parenting.
Well,
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's something I have been learning. Thanks. He and I together have been learning and practicing that. And it's, it takes awareness, obviously, for me to know, like when I'm off center, to notice that I am, to understand what's provoking that, and then to open up my mouth and let him know, like, if you're picking up on this, you're right, but let me tell you what my upset is coming from, because it's not you.
Exactly. It's not about you.
Yeah, and that's so important. I mean, I'm sure when I was a kid, and I think maybe all kids do this, they think it's them. Internalize the stuff. It's my fault somehow. I was thinking too about the wisdom of our bodies, and that's part of the wisdom of trauma. And what I like so much about Gabor Mate is that it isn't, trauma isn't like those big huge events that we might think. It is something, as I'm going to say, so no blame. Like it just is. And once you know what it is, you can work with it, and there's so many important things to learn from it too.
Yeah, he makes it very clear in the documentary that everybody's doing the best they can. He doesn't go as far as to say, with whatever resources they have in the moment, which is what I like to say, is that everybody's doing the best they can in each moment with whatever resources they have at that time. And, great teachers throughout the centuries have said different things. I think it was Maya Angelou who said, we do the best we can with what we know until we learn better, and then we do better. And everybody is just doing the best they can. Well, everybody has cross-generational patterns. Strengths and weaknesses, successes and failures, abuses and triumphs that they inherit through their bloodline. Everybody. So how far back do you go before you say, okay, this person is the cause of it all? It's just not possible to say that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot about that documentary that was very useful. It was very intense for most of the group members last night, and we ended up offering some faster EFT tapping at the end to get people settled and let the energies flow and release resistance, etc. And so, I suppose we should mention to people in case they're interested that I believe what was the name of it? The Wisdom of Trauma.
Yeah.
So if you go to wisdomoftrauma.com, they like to have donations. They like to have people pay for it. But there's a very well-done documentary on wisdom that focused on the work of Gabor Mate. And I appreciate it. I should mention that, Jill, you were the one that turned me on to that yesterday. I had seen the notices for it but hadn't turned into it. But when you said that at one point in the documentary, what you heard sounded almost exactly like what the ancient Aramaic forgiveness says. And basically that it's the thoughts and interpretations we choose about what goes on around us that creates our upset and creates our experience of life. It's not the actual event itself.
Right. And also his comment was, and once you know that, once it's you and not the other person, you go from being the victim. If it's somebody else doing something to you, you're a victim. But if it's you, then you're in control, and that's a very powerful position to be in. That absolutely made me think of the work that Dr. writes, and you teach the Aramaic forgiveness.
Yeah, and if you go to YouTube and you look for it, you can find there's like a 2-hour talk where Gabor is talking with. He's on stage with Diedrich Wolsak that we've mentioned before.
Wow.
And
yeah.
And they're doing a presentation at a seminar, and their work is very, very similar, and oddly enough, their life experiences were very similar. They were both, born into prisoner camps, and severe physical abuse and isolation, neglect, etc. So in their early years, both those men, Diedrich Wolsak and Gabor Mate, are products of not having their fundamental emotional needs met very well in their early years. And they both spent a lot of time adjusting to that, coping with that, sublimating those energies, trying to create ways to hold their mental, emotional states together in spite of having serious, sometimes physical, but mostly mental, emotional trauma in their formative years. And both of them are so honest about that and have worked on themselves with the tools that they've encountered, and so that, to my eye and ear, lends a great deal of credibility to their work. And the fact that their work is so similar to the Reality Management Worksheet and the Ancient Aramaic Forgiveness and what Course in Miracles promotes. Basically, Diedrich Wolsak's work developed out of his personal life and studying Course in Miracles as a way to turn himself around from being basically suicidal at age 50. So there are ways to get access to both Gabor Mate's work and Diederik Wolsek's work without having to pay money. So I'm perfectly comfortable talking about that here.
Yeah, well, Gabor Mate anyway has probably plenty of YouTube videos, and I actually first heard of him on a podcast with Russell Brand, I think is the guy, which at the time. So.
Well, and they had excerpts of that in the documentary.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it is, Aramaic forgiveness, I think, was my first window into this type of work, and the idea that I my perceptions might not be very accurate. They're based on my experience, and the hopefulness of the fact that you can untangle these thoughts and these beliefs. And I mentioned that I felt tangled up yesterday, and I truly did. And I know that forgiveness, to forgive, means to cut or undo, right, in Aramaic. So I like that image. I didn't like it at the time when I felt like a tangled up ball of yarn, but it seems impossible. I look at this thing and it's knots, and it's just like, how ever will I undo this? And the hopefulness is that you can, and it does take a long time. Dr. Rice used to be very daunting to me when he would say, people do this for 10 years and they just start to get it. And I think, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can hang in for that long. But there's relief along the way. You don't have to do the 10 years and suddenly the sun comes out. It happens over time. And I have been working on this particular thing in one way or another for a few years. And yesterday I pulled apart a really big chunk of it. So that's the hope, and the positive message for all of this is that it can be done. What seems impossible can actually be done.
Yeah, that's a delightful thing to hear. I greatly appreciate your calling with that testimonial, and I would echo for people that you have been doing this work. You have been exposed to this work for, I think Michael originally would say, at least 5 years, and sometimes 5 to 10 years before people really start to get it. And if I'm not mistaken, you're pretty much at that 5-year mark since one of the first times you called in and did a worksheet live on the air and gave that gift to yourself and others. And I appreciate the testimonial that it continues to show the benefits of your effort and the power of the tools when they are actively applied.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, yep, I think I am right at that 5-year mark too. So keep going. Anyone who's listening and feels worried about the long time frame, keep going.
Sweet.
Welcome, Dr. Michael Rice and Jeannie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job, Jill.
Thanks.
Layer by layer, here a little, there a little, with stammering lips and other tongues as you speak to us.